I know very little about my mother's parents. Her family as a whole came from Cumberland, and they, her father had, but by the time her father was born, he was born in London. The family had come down and they had a house in Hackney, and her father was or his father died when he was when my mother's father was 14. He had a heart attack and died at 52, leaving, I think, a family of about 4. I can correct that. I've got information upstairs on that one. And he had just had to go out to work and had to give up education in order to earn. And he started his own business selling foot plasters and ended up being very wealthy. And he sold goods to chemists. I do have a brochure upstairs of the goods he sold. A lot of dressing table things and glassware which would have been used in experiments or in labs and things like that. And powder puffs and quite a wide variety of things. They separated at some point. He apparently had an affair with the governess, who then lived with him. Whether he ever married Olga, we're not quite certain. But anyway, my grandmother died relatively young. She had a tubercular hip, and I gather died of bone tuberculosis, which was quite common in those days. I have one picture of her as quite a late middle age, I would think. I have no other photographs of her. And I know nothing about her, actually, as a person. My mother was, her maiden name was Nixon, so we're talking about a Mr. and Mrs. Nixon. And the Nixons, apparently, in Cumberland, were one of the old Reaver families. The Reavers were rather anarchic group. When my grandfather found out about the Reavers, he stopped doing any further research because he was so ashamed of the possibility of criminality. Whereas when I learnt about it, I wanted to find out because it was interesting, different, and they were survivors. The Reavers used to do a lot of rustling. They stole sheep and cattle, and a lot of the architecture in Cumberland and Northumberland is based upon the fact that the Reavers were there and very powerful and active. You have what they call peel towers, which are very tall buildings on several floors, where the cattle are driven in to the ground floor. The family would have lived on the floor above, or the 2 floors above, and on the roof they would have had something to be able to light a fire to ask to get the sheriffs to come, or what they were called. Now, the Reavers came into existence about the time of Edward I, and I suspect, though I don't know, that Edward used them to try and destabilise the Scottish crown. And they were eventually disbanded and acted against when James VI of Scotland came to be King of England, the first James, in 1603. And a lot of them were banished, some to Northern Ireland. There were about 72 families involved. One of the most powerful was Armstrong, and there were a couple of peers involved as well. They, of course, escaped punishment and were able to continue to own their estates and generally remain wealthy. The action was taken against people lower down, but I don't think the Nixons were not a large group. There were the Scottish Reavers and there were the English Reavers. Often they intermarried. They weren't very reliable, as I gather. If you had them fighting on your side, you were never certain that they would actually stay on your side, that they wouldn't disappear into in the undergrowth and help the other side.